Hello and welcome to another video. Now in today's episode we're going to be breaking down some of the most famous and legendary waves on the planet. You know, these are breaks that are steeped in history, they're sort of just got that mystical air about them, you know, and I've been lucky enough to surf most of these famous breaks around the world. So without further ado, let's dive in. So where better to start than in Bali? Now Uatu is the break that put Balinese surfing on the map. You know, it's an incredible wave, super long. On normal days, it's actually sort of broken up into multiple waves. You've got temples at the top, which is like a hollow, sort of slabby left, and then it moves through to like the peak, which is exactly that, like a more of an A-frame peak, but obviously a predominant left. And then you've got racetracks down the end, which is this like shallow sort of freight train barrel. On like the best days, they sort of like link up, but still it's kind of like broken into sections still. And then you've got like Bommy and outside corner, which are these like outer reef parts. Uatu is a really special wave because not only is it in this like amazing setting with the cliffs and this incredible water and reef, it handles like any size. So it can be surfed from 1 foot to 20 foot bigger. And it's really unique as well because you've got that amazing like cave paddle out. You know, there's not many places in the world where you walk down through those stairs and then have to go through a cave and then paddle out, you know, across the reef. It's a really amazing place to surf. And obviously Uatu as well is really crowded. It's definitely like a intermediate, advanced only sort of spot, especially at low tide. It gets real shallow and you got to walk across the reef. So I definitely wouldn't recommend it, you know, if you're a beginner, lower end intermediate. But it's really cool because you get to sit up on the cliffs and like just watch all the action, like especially when it's really big. It's like really cool just to sit up there and watch if you're too scared to surf like me. Next up to South Africa and J Bay. Now J Bay is one of those waves that's just so mystical and so sought after. It's a right hand point break by which all other right hand point breaks are measured. You know, it's just incredible wave. I've surfed it a few times and had 1 or 2 really good like fun days out there. But yeah, I found J Bay to be a really fast wave. It's not like points say in Australia where they sort of like bend around the headland. It just kind of comes straight in and like zips across the rocks. So to surf it how you see like the CT guys and like the best surfers surf it is really difficult, or at least it was for me. It's really fast, and you know, the sections don't often link up unless it's a specific swell direction or it's got enough size, and especially that super tube section as well. Like it's really hard to surf that and go fast and do turns. Whereas at the end it does slow up a bit. I think that section's called point. It's more of a normal paced point break. So yeah, I just spent most of my time just surfing down there. It's really crowded, but it's one of those waves that, because it is fast, you know, a lot of people aren't making it around sections, and it is so long, you can sort of tee off on these different parts of it and find a little bit of space. But you can do that, and then you can also have like the most frustrating surf ever as well. So I just wanted to interrupt today's video to let you know about today's sponsor. Now, Directo is a super handy Chrome extension that helps you save money when booking accommodation. So whenever you're looking for accommodation on your favorite websites such as booking.com, Vrbo, Airbnb, these third-party sites take a large cut, meaning you often pay more than if you book directly. The Directo Chrome extension allows you to find that business or property's official website and directs you to it. It's super easy to download. All you need to do is Google Directo Chrome extension, install it via the Google Chrome store. It's completely free. Then head to your favorite accommodation sites, start searching for hotels and rooms as you normally would. Then if Directo finds a match, you'll see the Directo logo pop up. Then you'll be able to head to that specific property's website. Once you've gone onto their website, you can see the difference in price, and you never know, you might be saving quite a lot of money, especially if like me, you're traveling a lot and you're booking accommodation regularly. I'll leave the link in the description where you can check Directo out. But for now, let's crack on with the video. Next up, we've got Snapper Rocks. Now, Snapper is actually, I guess, like a new legendary wave. It's quite interesting that it was almost entirely man-made due to a sand pumping project. And yeah, it kind of accidentally created one of the best waves on Earth. I've spent quite a lot of time in Australia, so I've been lucky enough to surf Snapper quite a lot. Had some of the best surfs of my life out there and some of the worst surfs of my life just due to the crowd. One of those waves where you can like take off on like a 1 foot whitewater and then it can just grow into this head high tube. So it's really, really sick. Pretty hard to get waves at the top, especially when it's good and like the local crew are on it. They just kind of dominate that behind the rock section. As well, that part of the wave is like really technical, like way harder than it looks. Not only is it quite heavy and slabby and you've got the rock right in front of you, the backwash is really intense. So you might somehow be in position for a wave, but then you go to take off and the bottom drops out underneath you, and then you've got like a 2-foot whitewater coming towards you as well. So while you see all these guys like knifing in under the lip behind the rock there, that's way harder to do than it looks. And then like just to the side of that, you've just got like a pack of like 50, 60 guys all just so wave hungry. You're basically like paddling for like every wave or every one that you think's good, just hoping that somebody falls off on takeoff, and then like you're next in line and you can go. So often when you're surfing snapper and a lot of these like Australian points, there'll be like 5 or 6 guys or more like on the shoulder, just like paddling their heart out, like basically going, hoping that the person who's deepest falls off, and then the next person might fall or might not catch it, and it's just like goes like that. And eventually, you know, if you spend hours out there, you do get a couple, but at the same time it's like the most frustrating place to surf in the world. But what can you expect? It's snapper. Then sticking in Australia, we've got Bells Beach. Now, there's not many waves that have so much history to them. Bells holds one of the longest running surf contests in the entire world. Now, Bells gets a pretty bad rap for being like a fat, burgery sort of wave. It is fat, but it is quite like an open wave, and like cutbacks and carves is basically just what I do, so it suits my surfing. And surfed it like good a few times and it's been really, really fun. Obviously really, really crowded. It comes with like a bit of cold water and cold weather as well, especially, you know, in like that autumn, winter time when it gets really good. You know, you're kind of wearing boots, 4-3 hood down there. But then next to it, you've got Winky Pop, which is, I think is like a better wave. It's like more refined, it's like steeper and faster, so it's more of like a high performance wave, and it's like easier to sort of go top to bottom, whereas Bells is like this kind of like meandering like wall where you're kind of just carving and pumping through like fat sections. But that said, it's a really, really cool wave. You know, it's so iconic. You know, you go into the car park and you've got the famous cliff there, and you can really like feel that kind of energy of being there. I feel like a lot of these famous spots, they come with that aura, and when you're surfing them in real life, you can feel that. Next up to Hawaii, and we've got Pipeline. Now Pipeline is probably the most famous wave ever. Now I know we see all like the videos of like the top guys and locals like getting these amazing waves, but you know, the reality is for most surfers, unless you're putting time in over there, you know, like season after season after season, like waiting to get like the best ones, you know, it's not somewhere you can just rock up and surf. Number one, it's so hierarchical and, you know, localized, so the locals are always getting the best ones, even if, you know, you're good enough to go out there and get a good one. But then secondly, the waves like really, really intense, so heavy. The waves move faster than anywhere else in the world. I know it's cliche, but they really do just like stand up so like vertically, and there's like so much water involved with each wave out there, just so thick and heavy. And then it's really, really shallow. It's not always perfect as well. You know, I haven't surfed it enough to know that, but from what I've seen after spending like a month there, there's a bit of backwash, there's a lot of closeouts, like there's not just these like perfect waves coming through all the time, just a lot going on out there, and it's really, really hectic. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what I'm talking about. The only surfs that I've had out there have been where I've sat on the shoulder like absolutely terrified and basically just watched from the channel. So I'm not the best person to be talking about Pipeline. It was really cool to go there and experience it and like sit in the channel and watch from the beach and be so close to the action, but it's not really a wave that I want any part of, to be honest. Next up, we've got Barracuda Cruise in Mexico. Now this is an incredible wave. It's probably my favorite wave on the planet. Just so perfect and just bowls up in just the most beautiful way. You know, the wave changes depending on how the sand is. So when I was last there a few weeks ago, it was like a slabby sort of behind the rock takeoff. So like a hollow tube section, and then it like fattened up and then doubled up again on the inside. So I've had some like really, really fun waves out there. I've been there a couple of times. That said, because it is so good, and you know, at low tide you've kind of got these like shallow like double up tubes, whereas at high tide it's more of like a performance-y wave for turns. Both are really, really fun, and it's just one of those places where you just have fun surfs like all day, whatever the tide, whatever the conditions almost. That said, when it's good, it's incredibly crowded. We're talking like 30, 40, even 50 guys out, like just battling for waves. It's a fiercely competitive lineup as well. And because the rip's so strong, like pulling you down the point, you've basically just got to paddle like your heart out to stay in position. If you sit up on your board or relax for a moment, everyone just paddles past you. You've got like the locals that are dominating, which is, you know, fair enough. And then you've got like really good surfers like battling for waves like just off of them. And then there's like everyone else just further down the point as well. So yeah, it's definitely not a wave that I'd recommend for like beginner or intermediates. Relatively easy wave to surf, but because of the rip and the intensity of the crowd, it's probably an advanced surfers only kind of spot. Next up, we've got Cloudbreak in Fiji. Now, Cloudbreak's absolutely legendary. I've only surfed it a handful of times. When I surfed it, it was probably a little bit big for me, like a bit out of my kind of comfort range or way outside of my comfort range. It was only like sort of 6 to 8 foot and probably not that scary for most people's standards, but I just thought it was really shallow. There was like a bit of wind like coming up the face, and there's just these like dark blue like slabby tubes like rolling down the reef. So I definitely struggled out there. On smaller days I found it pretty fun, like there's still like some barrels and sections with turns and stuff, but a really long wave. And again, kind of like Pipeline, I haven't spent enough time out there to really give you a detailed explanation of it. I was only there for a week or so, but it's a really big reef. I know when it gets really big it breaks way out on like the second or third reef. But on like normal days, it's on the first reef. It basically has to be bigger than 8 foot to break out past like the normal first reef section. So if you're going there like on a normal day-to-day basis, you're surfing that first reef. Cloudbreak's interesting because it's not a wave where you can just like shoulder hop off the end. The waves don't dissipate as they bend down the reef. You could have like a 6 to 8 foot wave that just holds its size through the whole thing and then closes out on the end section. You know, there's nowhere to hide out there basically. And I like waves that you can hide at. So yeah, and that end section is called shish kebabs. On the best day out there, it was so hectic, like I basically didn't even catch a wave, but I saw a guy break his leg, like basically snap his shin like this. Mason Ho was out there and he paddled out, caught one wave, scratched like all his back up and then just got out. And then there's like these 6 to 8 foot sets like rolling in, and that was all going on in like the same 5 to 10 minute period. And I was just like, oh my God, this is fucking insane. Went back to the boat and just watched for a bit, just with fully like with my tail between my legs. And Cloudbreak's really interesting as well. And I think I might make another video on this, but it used to be privatized. So you used to have to stay on Tavarua Island to be able to surf it. And unless you were staying and paying on that island resort, you couldn't surf Cloudbreak. You went, paid your money, and you'd have access to one of the best lefts or best waves in the world. And there'd be nobody out, or just literally you and the crew that you're on the boat with. Next up, we've got Puerto Escondido. Now, Puerto Escondido is one of those mystical waves, you know. It's one of those waves where you look at photos and videos of it and just go, how the hell is that even possible? You know, we've all seen those like big swells that hit the beach there at Playa Zicatela. How can a beach break be that big and powerful and incredible? And the reason that actually happens is because it's really deep off the back of the wave. So there's kind of like a deep underwater canyon, sort of how Nazare is. That basically funnels any swell into the beach at Zicatela, and then that just unloads on the sand there. Now, Playa Zicatela is by far the heaviest wave I've ever surfed. Even on like a 2 to 3 foot day, you see really heavy waves just folding over themselves and just with the most powerful like spits. Breaks really close to the beach, it's really shallow, you know, most days it's really, really crowded, and there doesn't have to be that much swell for it to be big. I remember the swell was like 5 feet at 17 seconds one day when I was there, and the waves were massive. It was like 15 to 20 foot, a legitimate big wave, and I just couldn't believe like what I was watching. Like I went down there like planning just to surf like my normal like board, and got down there and just watched a few waves. I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. And you definitely need a step up out there. Like both times I've been there, I've been pretty underprepared. So I've only really been out there on like the smaller days where it's been like head to double overhead. But that said, on those days I've had like the best waves of my life. Sick like A-frame tubes. So sticking in Latin America, next we head down to Costa Rica to the end of the road and Pavones. Now I surfed Pavones for the first time this year. It's an incredible wave, really, really long, really, really fast. When I was there, the swell was okay. I chased like the first south swell of this season down there, so everyone was frothing for it, and it was so busy in the lineup. We're talking like 60 to 70 people out in the water at once. It's kind of split into two sections. You've got like the top bit, which is kind of this like wonky, weird wave, and then the inside, which is way better. It's like more refined and more perfect. So that's like the most rippable part of the wave. I think the swell direction was a little bit off when I was there, so it wasn't as good as it can get. And from what I've heard, if the swell direction's a little bit different, it can like slow up a bit, because I found it really hard to sort of rip into and like tee off on my backhand. Maybe it's just my technique, but it's quite a fast wave and hard to surf like top to bottom the whole way down. But if you're like frontside or on a 20 or whatever, you just highline and go real fast. It's probably like the funnest wave ever. And then yeah, in that little town there's not really that much going on. It's just this really hot, like sweaty jungle, just with a few like restaurants and shops, tiendas and stuff. It's also got a really interesting history, and if you haven't already, check out my video breaking down the history of Pavones. Next, we've got Skeleton Bay in Namibia. Now, this is one of the few places on today's list that I haven't actually surfed. To be honest, it looks like an amazing wave, but I imagine it's one that's way harder to surf than it looks. Obviously, you've got cold water, hellish current sweeping down the point. It's really heavy. It's quite fickle, but you know, it's one of those places where you can get the wave of your life. You know, we've all seen the clips. You get like 6, 7 tubes on the same wave. It's ridiculous. Yeah, definitely somewhere that I'd like to go one day. But yeah, let me know if you surfed it. I'd love to hear what it's actually like, you know, how rippy it is, how makeable those waves actually are, because we all see the pros like threading through them, but like good surfers can make basically all waves look amazing. So it's not necessarily like an accurate representation of the wave. So yeah, please let me know if you've been there. I'd love to hear what it's like. Next, we've got Aragan Bay over in Sri Lanka. Now, this is definitely one of the mellowest waves on our list. It's a really, really fun wave, really, really forgiving, and that combination creates an amazing wave and an amazing setting. You know, Aragan Bay is a really cool place to visit, but being such a mellow, easy ride, it does attract the crowds. And I found out there, like the level of surfing is generally pretty low compared to some of these other like legendary waves. It's definitely not got the power or like high standard of surfing that come with some of these other waves. So yeah, it's more of like an intermediate crowd. It's super, super busy. But that said, if you want a surf where it's not that competitive and it's like quite easy to kind of get waves, that's definitely the place to do it. There's a few other waves in the area as well that you can go and explore to escape most of the crowd as well. Next, we've got Anchor Point in Morocco. So Anchor Point is a legendary wave. It's a wave that put Morocco on the map in terms of surfing. On the right day, it's a sick wave. It's really fun for turns, and you've got like the odd tube section as well. That said, it's so crowded, and out of all the places that I've been to in the world, it's got one of the most aggressive and most annoying like lineups out there. Like locals are obviously out there dominating, but they're also like burning each other, and just like a kind of a bad vibe out there, and people just like obviously snaking each other, burning each other. The standard of surfing is generally pretty low from what I've seen. So yeah, it's definitely not somewhere that I love going to. But that said, the wave is really fun. Like I used to just paddle out really early in the morning, like before it was even light, and just get 2 or 3 set waves before the crowd like descended, and usually just got my best waves by doing that. So yeah, that is a rundown of some of the world's most legendary and most famous waves. Obviously there's way more that you can add to this list. I might even do like a second video of this because they're quite fun to make. But yeah, these are all absolutely incredible waves that can be so perfect and so good, but because of their fame, they all come with the crowd. So often when we're going to these amazing waves, we expect the experience to also be amazing and like match what we've got in our dreams and visions, you know. But when you get there and it's crowded and not as perfect as you think it's going to be, it's trips to some of these waves don't always pan out as you'd expect them, but that's kind of just part of surf travel, you know. It's if everywhere was just perfect all the time, it'd kind of like take the magic out of surfing. So hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe if you did. For now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you in the next ep.